Stephen Silver is next, our next writer.
Hello. I'm going to be reading The Destiny of Einar the Brave. This was actually written a few years ago. A science fiction convention gave me a picture drawn on a napkin and said, write a story about this, about 500 words for us, so that we can help promote the convention. And it's going to be reprinted later this month in the anthology Fantasy for the Throne, Stories for One Sitting. Wherever there is a maiden in distress, wherever there is a tyrant needing to be deposed, wherever there is a wrong to be righted, Einar the Brave would appear. Einar was quaffing an ale with one hand and fighting off a horde of goblins when word reached him that the beautiful daughter of King Jathpar had been captured by the Witch of Angar. He dispatched the last 20 goblins and pulled his sword from the last of the creatures before he rushed to rescue the princess. En route, Einar had a series of encounters, which need not be recounted, for they were the traditional dragon slaying, ogre bashing, troll quashing that get so tedious and only serve to lengthen the bard songs and increase their fees. In fact, Einar's journey involved a lot of walking, often through mud, dirt, and rain. There was a little excitement when a bridge he was crossing was washed away, but he swam for the nearer bank and pulled himself from the freezing torrent half a league downstream and lay in the mire for the better part of the day before picking himself up and continuing his travels. His journey got better the next day when he came across the small village of Hearthkirl. Although only home to perhaps 24 people and twice that number of swine, the village had the requisite inn that always seemed to appear when travelers needed one, no matter the state of the local economy or proximity to trade routes. At the inn, Einar was able to get a hearty meal of stew, wash it down with a locally brewed ale that was twice as thick as the stew, and wash the worst of the muck and grime from himself, although he had to share a trough with some of Hearthkirl's numerous porcine inhabitants to do so. Einar eventually reached the princess and found her tied to a tree near the edge of the cliffs of darkness, from which unspeakable evil could surely be counted upon to drag her to her doom. He struck an heroic pose in front of the princess, not because he wanted to, but because he knew it was expected of him. To not strike the pose would hinder the bards, who would surely sing of his deeds. He spoke to the princess, saying, "Fear not, for I shall release you and return you to the loving arms of your father." To not make such a speech would further hinder the bards, who would surely sing of his deeds. The princess pulled a wand from behind her back where the ropes bound her much more loosely than they appeared and shouted a mysterious word. A sphere of darkness so black it sucked in all light appeared in the air beneath the cliff and sucked Einar the Brave over the edge. And the beautiful princess daughter of King Jathpar disappeared to be replaced by the hideous Witch of Angar, who freed herself from the loosened bonds and flew off to her hidden lair. Wherever there is a maiden in distress, wherever there is a tyrant needing to be deposed, wherever there is a wrong to be righted, Einar the Brave would no longer appear.